Okay, this chapter here is about the ending of my beach towers days. Things were getting tough around town for playing the piano bars because karaoke started coming in where people could go and sing along with, piano bars used to be the sing-along idea at first, even though I kind of played them I did some sing-along, but it wasn't. You'd sort of entertain people, at the piano. And they were all over the place. That was a rage for a while. I was booked every week solid, And then what happened is the karaoke came in, got big in Japan where it started. And then it took over Vancouver. And all these places that used to be piano bars, they thought, well, why the heck do we need a piano player? We just get a karaoke machine and everybody can sing. And they became so popular that it wrecked the piano bars. And by that time, the roadblocks and the non-smoking in bars, because all the time I was in the piano bars, you could smoke and everything back in those days. And when that smoking thing came in, banning the smoking and roadblocks, everything, scaring the heck out of people at Christmas time, and then roadblocks all year round, it absolutely ruined the bar scene. So a lot of the entertainers ended up going on cruise ships. I remember hearing a few people tell me the nightmare of cruise ships, how they don't go on those things. Because I remember seeing the band years ago on that Arcadia I went to New Zealand on. But anyway, my agents were, I was starting to miss weeks where I'd have no gig, and that never happened to me before. And all the bars and the bands were getting less and less and less, and so my agent was booking cruise ships. All the agents started booking the cruise ships. They became big because it was easy to book someone on a cruise ship, and then they get a steady money coming in. I think I made $2,000 US a month plus room and board, and that's in the early 90s. And so the agent loved that. He can just sit back and collect the money months and months at a time. He didn't have to do any work. And so I was booking through John Whitefoot at the time. I used to book through Siegel Entertainment for years too, Bob Siegel and his brother. His brother's a bass player around town. He's actually quite good. Bob's a good guitar player too. But anyway, I don't know if they're still going. I guess they are. Jan, it was his brother, Jan Siegel. Anyway, things were getting bad around town. I was trying to pay maintenance payments to Lisa. I think I was paying her $300 a month or something, and I just couldn't make enough money to pay that anymore. And she was living at home for free, and with her parents were paying for everything. Kids were going to school, and my life was going to crap because I missed my kids so much. I love my kids so very much. I love Chelsea and Jesse, and they used to come in and stay with me and at the Beach Towers. They loved it there, and I missed them so much. My heart breaks the rest of my life from breaking up. I don't know what to say. I'm heartbroken about that. Still am, always will be. But I love my kids so much. So anyway, what happened is I got an offer to go on the cruise ships. I tried it once with Roger as a trio, or maybe that was later. We did that, but we did a lot of drinking back in those days and everything. But anyway, I decided I'd go on the cruise ships and give my apartment up so I could pay the maintenance, because I couldn't afford to go on the cruise ship, pay for the maintenance, and keep my apartment and save any money. I guess I maybe could have, and that's what I should have done, because that was another huge mistake. Because when I'd come off the cruise ships, I had no place to live. So I'd come into town, I'd expect my agent to have jobs for me, and he never have any jobs, probably on purpose, because he knew I'd be forced to go back on the ship. And so I'd stay in a motel out in Coquitlam with all my equipment crammed in the room, And I got real depressed doing that, I'm telling you. I'll tell you about that later. But anyway, the first days of the cruise ships were good. I remember West made a big banner for Bon Voyage. He painted this big banner. I actually still have the banner upstairs in my collection of stuff. And he had it up in my apartment, and everybody was excited. And anyway, so I go to the airport with all this stuff, and I'll have to tell you about my Watson Lake trip sometime too. Anyway, I went to the airport, and I had like a big my Roland FP8 in a big case, which is like 6 feet long, 5 feet long or something, and heavy. Then I had a trunk full of chords and another trunk full of songbooks and chords and songbooks. And then my luggage I had to buy a tuxedo and this sort of a ship-looking coat and all these clothes with white pants, and had to buy all this junk anyway to take on the ship. So I had about 7 big heavy pieces of stuff that I had to lug out there. But back in those days, they didn't, if you told them you worked on the cruise ships, they just let you through. They didn't search your luggage or nothing. And they didn't even charge, they didn't charge you for for taking all that heavy stuff on the plane. Things have certainly changed from then. So anyway, the first time I left, I got on the plane. I forget where we landed. We flew from Vancouver to somewhere and then down to Puerto Rico. And I got off at Puerto Rico, and I'm all confused, of course, because I never did this before. And it happened in New York, too, once. These ships, you see, when they get into port, everybody takes off into port, and you can't get a hold of anybody that works on the damn ship. And so it happened in New York once, too. I landed at the airport with all my junk. There's nobody there to meet me. I didn't know in those days people hold signs up sometimes with your name on them, but there was nobody there to meet me. I ended up having to load all that crap. I did it in Puerto Rico, too. Put it all in a cab. A poor cab driver, it's like 7 huge pieces, and takes me down to the docks in Puerto Rico, where the big fort is and everything. And I should know the town, but anyway, it's the main town where all the docks, the cruise ships dock, and there's my big cruise ship sitting there. So the cab drops me off, and I go on there, and it's the Regent Sun, the cruise ship. I made a film about it. I was on it mostly of all the cruise ships. I worked on Princess, Carnival, and Regency Cruises. I can't remember if I did any other ones. Maybe Celebrity, I don't know. But Regency was the main ship I worked on, and it was 850 passengers. I had the main lounge, and the lounge had a casino. Anyway, when I got there, I got off the dock with all my equipment. Then I have to go on the ship, tell them who I am, and they said, "Oh, I think the cruise director's gone into town for a while. I don't know, maybe he'll be back by, and I have to play that day. I mean, God, this is terrible." And so finally someone said, "Oh, bring the stuff on board, okay?" So I lug all this stuff by myself, one trip after another. It's sweating like crazy. It's hot as hell down there. I get it all on the ship. And then you can't use the elevators. Staff can't use them. They're stairs. And so I wait around on the ship. Finally, somebody shows up. You got to play at 4 o'clock. Normally on the cruise ships, I would have to play in the afternoon on port days at 2 o'clock till 3, and then I'd play 4 to 5, and then 6 to 7, then 9 to 10, and 11 to 12 or something like that. 5 sets, 1 hour each. And then I did that for months and months at a time, 7 days a week. No wonder I went crazy. But anyway, the first day, so finally someone says, okay, your room's downstairs. It's like 4 or 5 floors down. Can't use the elevator. I got to haul all this stuff down one trip at a time. These cases are heavy, probably weigh 30, 40, 50 pounds, some of them. So I drag them all down into my room, get them in there, unpack, change as quick as I can to put my fancy clothes on and go up, play my first set as we sail out of port. And then I was so tired that I'd flown all day. And, I'd gone to the airport in the early morning in Vancouver, packed all that stuff by myself, flown all day, nobody to help me. Got down there, took the cab to the ship, packed it all in the ship, packed it down the 4 or 5 flights of stairs to my room. At least I had my own room with my own shower and my own steward. And then I went up and played my set and played that night. I had to play 4 one-hour sets. And so then I, finish. They have a midnight buffet on the ship that you can go to. I went there, I guess, and got something to eat, went to bed, get up in the morning. Then we're out at sea. And I think, oh, this is great. And it was great. I had a really good time the first couple of years. It was so neat because you didn't have to, once you're on the ship, you can get into the routine and you don't have to, pack all that equipment like in town here where you're setting up all the time and tearing down, or in a band where you're on the road with a van and the cold weather and, setting up every night and all this equipment. I didn't need lights or anything. I had my piano, the grand piano, with my CP80 on the top I could use for strings and organ and a little drum machine with me. And so I could just go up there every day and play. And, we were in the tropics, so it was, sailing along. I could see the flying fish out there jumping, flying on the water, and sometimes dolphins, and and the sunsets in the Caribbean are just beautiful. Everything, these clouds down there. Now I'm missing it. Anyway, I had a really good lounge, and there was a duo on the ship called 49th Parallel. That was Drummond Evil Eye Smith, his name was. He was the bass player. He was the guy that had a doctor in every port with pills. I tell that, I think, on my story about the shadow that I saw on the ship eventually. When a guy had died, there's a shadow went through my room. I got a whole chapter on that called The Shadow. Anyway, the ship was nice. I met lots of people on there, and the thing that was nice about it is that you'd get a different audience every week. There's some would stay for 2. I met one girl named Marilyn there on the ships. She used to come on purposely just to see me. She lived down in Philadelphia, I think it was. She was a kind of a skinny girl, and she used to smoke constantly, lay out in the sun. I guess she's like a groupie. And, I don't know, I met another one, I can't remember her name. I used to sneak them down to my cabin at night, and we'd mess around down there for hours, and then she would have her own, Marilyn had her own cabin. I would go there. And then I met this other lady from New York named Angela, and she used to come on board with her husband then, but then she'd fool around with me. She'd come down to my room and screw around with me all night long. And, oh, God, she used to send me all kinds of cards and stuff from New York, and when they lived in New York. So, and then when I played the other circuit up out of New York to Montreal on the ships, she used to come up there, and I used to play a circuit where I was in New York, stationed there, and we'd go up to Bar Harbor, Newport, Halifax, up to Quebec City, Montreal, and I don't know if we went to Montreal, Quebec City, I think, and then we'd turn around and come back. I'll talk about that more later. But anyway, I met Angela. She used to come on a lot, and then eventually she rented an apartment in Vancouver, but her and her husband, and finally he died years later, and I still send her a message once in a while, but We messed around a little bit, but she was kind of strange. But anyway, you always had girls on there. The gentleman hosts used to pick up the ladies too. A lot of girls go on there to meet guys, And so anyway, I used to sneak them down. One thing I did do there is I was I guess I was in my 40s somewhere, and late 40s, I don't know. I slept with an 80-year-old woman once on the ship, and she was a lot of fun. And now I don't think 80's too bad because my wife's 88, and she's still nice. But the guys, they teased me so bad. Oh, ho, 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 I slept with an 80-year-old. I said, she was a lot of fun, She used to talk to it, and anyway, that's another thing. But probably too much information for the children. And they're not children anymore, so it doesn't matter. And we had a lot of fun. And then we used to party up in this room. The radio guy, he was an East Indian guy from India. He had a little room upstairs by the bridge where the captain lived. And he had his own room up there, his own fridge and everything. I think I was sort of hanging around with that 80-year-old. That's where I met the 80-year-old. But she didn't act 80. She acted like she was about 50 or 60. She used to dance, and she was in real good shape. So anyway, we used to go up there and party half the night. And the orchestra on the ship was a bunch of Polish guys. And there used to be a cruise bar a crew bar on the ship. So we used to go there a lot, and all the old Polish girls are in there dancing around, and they like to drink a lot because the Polish guys, we used to go down to their room and drink vodka with 1 drop of honey in it. And they would have these big plates of pickled fish and all this stuff. But they were really good musicians, and they used to, them and the girls that worked on the ship, they used to send all their money home to Poland, to pay for things. They told me I looked like Sobolski. He's a Polish actor that I think he got killed by a train or something, but he had dark glasses like me and sort of dark hair. I guess I sort of did look like him. One of my good friends on there was the staff captain. He was a sort of a redheaded guy. He would come down to my dances all the time, and also that's where I met the guy that died, the guy that I saw the shadow go through my room that night. But I did all the islands in the Caribbean. I did Puerto Rico, Jamaica. I actually went to Jamaica twice with that Marilyn. She actually paid for my trip down there to the Sandals in Jamaica. We went to Montego Bay once in Negril and stayed for a week down there. That's where I learned how to scuba dive. I took a scuba diving course down there and did about 4 or 5 dives. We used to go up to Ricky's where they filmed 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And there's a bar there in a cave that you can go up the stairs and dive off the top. Anyway, I did 40-foot dives down there because I always swam. I also, in the Charlottes, I went scuba diving up there. And it's cold water up. The guy told me to pee in my suit. Keeps you warm. Anyway, Jamaica, I got offered a gig at a rum plantation in Montego Bay when I was there once. But they were going to reopen this estate up in Montego Bay where it used to be the Ballantyne's Scotch, I guess it was. No, it was a rum place. Anyway, it was a rich family down there, and it had been abandoned years ago, but somebody owned it, and they were talking about having me come down to play do a piano bar thing up there, but I guess it never happened. I went to Curacao, Venezuela. We went to Curacao in Venezuela, where my pill-popping friend nearly got us arrested by, I think I've told these stories before, but anyway, we went into town to get pills. He wanted to get pills. He had a doctor in every port. He was popping a lot of Percocets and Percodons and whatever he could get his hands on. And I remember he used to stay in his room with his lights off, listening to music all the time. His roommate used to complain. He had like all these towels from sweating. Good Lord. Anyway, we went in there, and he asked this guy for some pills or something, and the guy went and got him something. He ripped the guy off somehow, and all of a sudden these two big guys show up with machine guns and strapped over, AK-47s or something, talking to us about what happened, and they're going to arrest us. So we ended up, thank God, got back to the ship. That guy was a real screw-up. That was that Evil Eye Drummond Smith. He used to be in quite a few bands. I think his duo was called 49th Parallel, but he was actually quite famous in his own right. I think I looked him up once. Maybe I'll put a footnote later. But I went to Aruba. Aruba I loved. It was a beautiful island. The markets down there, they got these huge, papayas and everything. St. Bart's, St. Martin, St. Croix, St. John's, Bahamas, Barbados, St. Lucia, St. Kitts, Montserrat. I remember going out to the St. Croix. I remember going out to the nude beach, topless beach in those places, St. Croix and Montserrat. And they're sort of, the Montserrat's French, but there are a lot of girls walking around with no tops on. That was pretty interesting sightseeing. And then when I was in St. Croix, I remember an interesting story once. I was coming back from the nude beach, or it's not nude, it's just topless, but walking back, and I could hear this music, and it's an old church with all these black people in it. And they're wanging away on the guitars, and they got the tambourines, and they're singing and singing this, gospel songs. What a great sound. Anyway, I did about 6-7 years on the cruise ships until it drove me crazy, being away from my kids. I couldn't stand it. And also, I couldn't record on there. I couldn't write songs. You're working so many hours a day. 4 or 5 1-hour sets a day is a lot of playing. And I was, I didn't drink. Lots of times I didn't drink. I remember when I did drink on there, I got so screwed up I had to drink to get going to go to my gig. The time I saw the Shadow on there, I wasn't drinking though. I think I only had 1 beer. And I wasn't drinking heavy. I used to go on and not drink because I was getting in trouble with too much drink and then in depression. I remember one trip I was in New York. I had to play on the deck as we were going on the last day, and God, I was so drunk. I was embarrassed to think about it. I was probably people knew I was drunk too because people can always tell by your voice, But I used to, it started to drive you crazy after there. I used to go on and not drink too for long periods, but then, and then everything went good when I didn't drink. One time when I was drinking, I went down to my room with this little cleaning guy from Jamaica, and he ripped me off for $2,000 out of my coat, and I couldn't prove it. I looked everywhere in my room for days, and he was the only guy in my room, but then people have pass keys in there. I should never have taken my tuxedo off and left it in my room because we'd gone back up to the crew bar, you see, so he might have slipped it out. I was playing him music, we smoked a joint in there, which is a real no-no on the ship. But anyway, we did a lot of the islands, and then another trip I did is out of New York. Went New York, Bar Harbor, Newport, Halifax. I said that before. But New York was great. I used to walk uptown all the time. They had a lot of weird porno shops in those days. Good Lord, people doing all kinds of horrible things. Well, not horrible, but some of them were pretty gross stuff that I'd never seen anything like that before. But I enjoyed walking around Times Square, and they had guys doing card tricks, and I remember buying so many beautiful ties there, all silk ties from Italy, and they were like, I don't know, 3 for $20 or bucks or something like that. They're cheap as heck, So I used to buy ties there, and I had a lot of nice clothes then that fit me real good, tuxedo and, all kinds of clothes. I used to buy all these real nice shirts down in when I was down in the Caribbean that were like Hawaiian-style shirts. And I ended up, when I finished with the cruise ships eventually, I ended up giving all my suits and everything because I gained weight. I thought, I'll never wear them again. I gave them all to the Salvation Army in a great big box, and I'm sorry I ever did that. That's another big clothing thing I did after throwing away all my rock and roll clothes when I split up with Lisa. Anyway, I did all the islands, and we did the Quebec City was really nice. I liked that place. It's the old where we docked in Quebec City. There was, I think I mentioned this before when we were in Bar Harbor. There was a lot of gay people there. There was a jewelry store called the Family Jewels. Good Lord. And then Quebec City, I remember going up drinking beer up there. It was, gee, they have beer that's 15 or 18%. The clubs up there. But I liked Quebec City because it was got so much history. And when I was in Montreal, I played a piano bar out there once. I used to go up Mount Royal, but Quebec City, you can look over the St. Lawrence from where they had the war between the English and the French there, the Plains of Abraham, and the old Quebec City is really neat. It's like very old-fashioned, all old stone buildings, and they got a farmer's market there that people just speak French in. It was kind of, I really liked it there. And they have a little ride up the mountain like a cable car that you can go up to the plains, and walk around up there. So I loved that. And then I did the New York to Montreal trip. And then I came home. I kept getting trapped. You see, I'd come home, have to stay in a motel, run out of money, then I'd have to go away again. And so the last time I left New York, I think I was pretty loaded at the end of the ship, and then once on the cruise ships, I freaked out on the cruise ships, and I sort of had a nervous breakdown, and from being so lonely, and everybody thinks it's so wonderful, but it's like jail, and I see it now with these care homes, but and I had the best of the best, I guess, but I started. After seeing that, I forget what happened anyway. I got so pissed off finally at that ship. I started drinking heavy once, and I was down in my room, and I thought, I just can't do it anymore. It was the booze that was doing that, and the depression. I thought, I can't go up there. I don't want to go. And so I freaked out and never went. And then I just said, I can't do this anymore. I got to go home. And so this was after 6-7 years or whatever it was. And so they took me to the doctor's office who, I sort of knew all the people on that ship. And I kept drinking even when I was in the doctor's office. The nurse sat with me up there. And then when they took me to New York, they dropped me off to fly home, and they put me in Bellevue, which is the crazy house, which is like where one flew over the cuckoo's nest. And I think I told this story before too, but anyway, there was guys with machine guns in their garden. They had a red line you're not allowed to cross, and there's guys with guns in there, and it's serious. And they interviewed me. I said, I'm not crazy. I'm just depressed. I want to go home to Vancouver, I'm a Canadian. And I phoned Angela, who I knew in New York, and she came down and talked to them. Thank God for her. And so they finally let me go. I said, if you go home, you can go. That's the same thing that happened to me in L.A. So I said, okay. So they didn't deport me, though. So I got on the plane, flew home, and went to a detox when I got home. And I can't remember what happened after that. If I got out the detox, I went to one in Maple Ridge once for 30 days, too. But I got out, and then I ended up going on a cruise ship again. I took a trip to Europe, and I wasn't drinking. This is after, I think, though. But what happened is I went to one more cruise I took was the Mexico, Ensenada, Catalina on Carnival. And I got on that ship, and I absolutely hated it. It was I was in a room, double room, well, two single bunk beds with this big fat Mexican guy who had his friends in there all the time. You couldn't iron your clothes. There was no room. It was like a cramped room. You couldn't do your laundry. They wanted you to use the passengers' laundry facilities. You could never get up there. They were always busy. And I remember that guy, he never washed his clothes. His suit stunk from sweating. I hated it. And so anyway, on that ship, I ended up freaking out again and refused to come out of my room. This is twice that happened to me. Then I knew I was in trouble. So they locked me in my room. I told the staff captain off. I told this little gay guy off one time I was supposed to have a single room because I played a single Ricky's bar, the piano bar. And I still played the piano bar, but they gave me a double room with that guy. And anyway, so they made me stay in my room for like 2 days. And my roommate brought me. This was a different time. I had a different roommate that time. I guess maybe I did 2 trips on that trip, but the second time I had a different roommate. And he used to bring me booze, and I kept drinking all the time to the end. And then they kicked me off the ship, told me to get off. Okay, I said, fuck you, I'm getting off. I don't want to do this anymore. And I got off on the dock with all my equipment, and then the cops came and said, hey, you're not supposed to do this. You're supposed to go through immigration. I said, I was so screwed up, I didn't know what I was doing. And so they said, well, we're going to let you go. We're deporting you. We'll let you go if you go to that airport. Promise you're going there and go home. And I said, okay, I will. Okay, so I went home, flew in on Christmas Eve. I know I told this story before, but I flew in on Christmas Eve and went and stayed at a hotel downtown. And I was so hungover, I was dying for a drink. And I had to wait till 9 o'clock in the morning. And I went to the St. Helens downtown on Granville Street, 9 o'clock in the morning, banged back a bunch of booze. Thought, what am I going to do now? And no place to stay, hardly any money. So I don't know. I think that's when I went to detox again and found out I left my damn Les Paul on the ship. My beautiful Les Paul. I forgot it. And so what happened is that, thank God, Carnival was nice enough to send my guitar back. I had to go through all these channels to find out. And they finally found it, and they sent it back to me free of charge. My Les Paul. That Les Paul has been all over the world. It's been to all over the States, many different states, all over Canada, every city nearly in Canada. It's been all over the Caribbean. It's been to Europe. It's been to Sweden, Germany, England. God, it's been everywhere. Mexico. Anyway, when I finished my Mexico trip with Carnival and ended up in detox up here, that's when I started. I had no place to live, and when I got out of detox, Bill Crompton had that apartment in Burnaby by Central Park, and so I moved in with him, and that's starting another chapter in my life, because that was the end of my cruise ship days. So I got to go, and if I can think of something else, I'll put it in.